Hello, I'm Bernard Hickey from interest.co.nz and welcome to a special report on free trade. This is a bit off the beaten track for us, but it's worth having a look at this. There's been so much excitement over the last couple of days about this potential for a free trade deal with America. Helen Clark reckons it could benefit the New Zealand economy by $1 billion a year. But will it? Let's look across the Tasman at Australia, which signed its free trade deal with America a couple of years ago. It turns out the sugarcane farmers in Australia actually missed out. They couldn't get into America. And the beef farmers couldn't get much more of their stuff on. Dairy farmers, they got a little bit in, but they're not huge exporters in Australia. It turns out Australian exports to the US actually fell in the year after they joined a free trade deal with America. And the American pharmaceutical companies also lobbied hard to try and kill off Australia's version of Pharmac, called the Australian Pharmaceutical Benefits Scheme. Obviously the pharmaceutical companies in America wanted the Pharmaceutical Benefits Scheme to use the expensive drugs, the big name drugs, rather than the generics. So you've got to ask the question, would we really get the benefits? And also, do we need bilateral trade deals? A lot of people think that multilateral deals are much better. They're much cleaner, and in the end, they actually reduce trade barriers more directly and more efficiently. It also means that if you use a multilateral deal, you get away from some of the heavy lobbying that happens in the United States. And for those people who aren't aware, America's political system is rife with lobbying. This is where companies spend money on lobbyists to get their point of view across in America, through lobbying companies, often based on a street called K Street in Washington. Best example of this is Vietnam. In 2000, Vietnam signed a trade deal, free trade deal, apparently, with America. And Vietnam's catfish farmers decided to export heavily to America, where they just love catfish. It's almost as popular as tuna and salmon there. So Vietnam, Mekong Delta, very good for growing catfish, exported a lot of catfish in the following 2 years to America, took a fifth of the market, which is close to $600 million. The Catfish Farmers of America lobby didn't like this, of course, and lobbied for one of their senators to put a little piece of legislation through which stopped Vietnamese catfish from being promoted as catfished. They defined the word catfish as only relating to those catfish grown in Mississippi. They then forced the US Commerce Department to block catfish exports to America on the grounds that Vietnam was a non-market economy. This is ironic, coming from a place that spends hundreds of billions of dollars a year on subsidies for farmers. In fact, over the last 10 years, lobbyists have spent $19.9 billion in America on lobbying. Just to give you an example of what our companies will be up against when they try and negotiate a free trade deal with America. Tyson Foods, the world's biggest producer of chicken and beef, spent $1.1 million last year on lobbying in Washington. Dairy Farmers of America, the biggest dairy farming company, ironically which has a 50% joint venture with Fonterra, it spent $1.1 million last year on lobbying. And the drugs lobby, who will try and kill off our Pharmac, spent $135 million last year on lobbying. So we're up against it. A free trade deal is not going to be an easy thing, and we're going to have to be very careful to make sure that we protect our interests. I'm Bernard Hickey with a special report on free trade.